Make sure your team is prepared to fight off the latest cybersecurity threat. IT Pro TV is the resource to keep you and your IT team skills up to date. You can stream IT Pro TV's courses live and on demand worldwide, so there's no need to send staff to off-site training. Their team solution provides access to a supervisor portal for full control over your team's training schedule and group analytics. Visit itpro.tv/enterprise security and use the code ES30 to try it free for 7 days and receive 30% off your monthly membership for the lifetime of your active subscription. To learn more about IT Pro TV's team solution, sign up for a free demo of their supervisor portal. Pony Express. Check out their line of penetration testing devices, including the Pwn Pad, Pwn Phone, and Pwn Pro. For enterprises, there's Pwn Pulse, providing continuous visibility into wired, Wi-Fi, and Bluetooth spectrums across all physical locations, including remote sites and branch offices. For all those hard-to-reach places, there's Pony Express. Visit them on the web at ponyexpress.com. Welcome back, everyone, to Enterprise Security Weekly. Quick announcement, SANS Hackfest, November 13th through the 20th, Bethesda, Maryland. 2 days of talks in what they call the Summit, and then some full 6-day SANS courses, Net Wars, Coin-a-Palooza, Cyber City missions, secret challenges. It's going to be a lot of fun. You can go to sans.org/Hackfest17, use the discount code Hackfest17, and save $300 off your registration for the 2-day Hackfest Summit, where there'll be talks by wonderful people like me. And, well, other wonderful people, and me, I guess I should say. And
mainly you.
Mainly me, I guess.
I might be there. I also might be in San Francisco at that time. I just don't know. I go where SANS tells me to go.
You got to do the Dave Kennedy cloning yourself thing. Works great.
I've been working on that one.
Works great. So we're talking about network security architecture today. And to focus our discussion, I have 5 easy questions for you, John. They're easy. They're easy. So when you use next generation firewalls, like, what do you use those for? Do you enable protocol detection? Do you do URL blacklisting? Do you do user identity? Do you do SSL decryption? Do you do more? Do you do less? How do you balance what is being used on your next generation firewalls, which can do everything now under the sun? I don't know if you've read like Checkpoint's website lately.
It does everything.
They do like everything. And they all have endpoint clients. Like, you can do everything
on your network. It accelerates the cloud.
It accelerates the cloud. It provides actionable intelligence. The whole thing. What do you use your next generation firewalls for?
So with all the things that you list out, protocol detection, URL blacklisting, user identity, and SSL decryption, I was really happy that you had that in. And the reason why that SSL decryption is so important is because that's the thing that we see missing from a lot of these next generation firewalls. Even though that capability is there, they're basically completely passing through HTTPS traffic right out to the internet, or they're allowing that traffic to go directly to their web servers. And there's very little in the way of actually defending against attacks against web servers. Now, we talked about Signal Sciences, who once again is a sponsor, but they're doing a lot of that attack detection on web servers. And a lot of that detection can be done on your firewall. It's just you have to actually intercept the SSL, decrypt it, look for the attacks. Because many of the attacks, like SQL injection, cross-site scripting, will generate a tremendous amount of attack signatures that can be easily identified by your standard next-generation firewall whenever an attacker is trying to do that standard spray and pray attack. But once again, that feature is many times off, and it's not really getting in the way much at all. And that's one feature I think, Paul, that they need to have in place.
In that direction, basically, you're protecting your servers. And you need to look inside of the SSL tunnels, essentially, or the SSL traffic, and discover those attacks and potentially tear down a session. Where I'm not a huge fan of it is on the client side, where clients are going out to browse the web, and you want to look inside of a connection to some social media service, to some other kind of service, and determine if there's bad things in there. I think that's much better to be doing on the endpoint, because as soon as users leave your environment, they're going to browse the web and gain access to that stuff. Also, I don't think the firewall has enough context to be able to look inside all of those different protocols and do that analysis. Plus the overhead. I find more negatives in SSL decryption when you're trying to protect your clients going out to the internet than I do, any kind of positive things. So.
And that gets into your question too. Where do they actually fit into the mix, and how do they actually help? And this gets tough. And I think kind of what you're talking about is really political and HR in nature. Like, you're starting to monitor all the traffic for somebody that's going to WebMD. Do your proxy logs now become something that has PHI, and you got to make sure that HIPAA compliance is on that? Possibly. That's absolutely something that you should be looking into and talking with your compliance officers and HR. But we don't really get caught all that much by those egress proxy web servers. It just doesn't really seem to work that way. And one of the things I think that we both agree on is whenever you have one firewall that's kind of protecting the edge of your network coming in, and it's also doing inspection of what's going out, that firewall is really overtasked and overloaded at that point. It's a good idea to separate out those two into separate firewalls.
I think you also support my point too. So when you go on a penetration test and you're trying to build backdoors to go out of the network, when you see, oh my God, they've got SSL decryption, so I can't use HTTPS going out, like that doesn't stop you, right? That's not like, oh my God, like throw our hands up, it's over.
Yeah, usually it's used, most of the time, the SSL decrypted data for egress proxy, it usually comes in the form of like a forensics investigation, where you have a user that's surfing porn at work, and then they use those logs to reinforce that HR action.
Yeah. So what about, it's actually interesting, John. I like using URL blacklisting coupled with user identity management such that I can create groups of users and say these users get this list of blacklists and these users get that list of blacklists, and have some management to be able to do some URL blacklisting, which I think is a pretty valid strategy. Couple that with being able to identify your users and put them in groups, because typically URL blacklisting is like, oh, well, these users need to get to those, some of those sites. I think it's a good combination if it works.
And kind of the heart of that, right, is let's say you want to use internet whitelisting, and then all of a sudden someone says, marketing can't have that. Marketing needs to go to all of these websites.
Right.
So then they basically reduce the security. They basically make the exception. They basically make the rule based upon a smaller exception. So being able to segment your environment and establish different rules based on the roles at work, that's just good security. It's not something that you have to reduce the total security across the board. Also,
if you could also apply that user identity and management to protocol detection. In other words, these users, they can use SSH, but these users, they can't. I think that's pretty cool too.
Yep. And we so rarely actually see that. It's pretty rare.
Gotcha. So where do proxy servers then fit into the mix, and how do they help in your network security architecture today? So just a little background, I used to run pretty large open source Squid proxy servers. Largely, they're not really security, at least the way we use them, for bandwidth reduction. So we had a caching proxy server. And then we use them to support, like you mentioned, John, our HR investigations. If HR came to us, we could say, yes, here are the sites that user was going to. There really wasn't much. I mean, you can put some URL filtering and other stuff on there, but I feel like that's like a tertiary thing.
And I think that pretty much sums it up. That's where we're seeing them used predominantly in most organizations. It's pretty rare for us, at least I think it is, like to actually get caught by a proxy server that actually even sees command and control.
Do you create filtering rules on your network gear or deploy firewalls internally?
I would say both. You're going to put in your filtering rules on your networking gear. A lot of times that's being done by VLANs. You're going to segment your network and have VLANs, and you got to make sure that you implement VLANs correctly so people can't just jump from one VLAN to another. And as far as firewalls internally, yes, you should turn on your host-based firewalls on the inside of your network always. That is something we very rarely see. We're hoping to start seeing it more starting this year. We're hoping, crossing our fingers. But if you actually enable host-based firewalls, it makes lateral movement using tools like Death Star or PowerShell Empire or Bloodhound a lot more difficult. You're restricting the total movement to an attacker to just that workstation and what that workstation is accessing immediately.
I find that there's a management issue, at least when I did it years ago, when you've got, let's just say Cisco networking gear for your routers and switches. When you start applying filtering to all of those different interfaces or filtering on VLANs and doing some of the more complex stuff, I find that gets really difficult to manage. And I know Cisco has tools that we can laugh and joke about, like Cisco Works, which is the most ironic name ever.
Or Cisco ICE is another one.
Yeah, just the management of those filtering rules I always found to be very cumbersome. And you can very easily just lose track of what has access. And usually it's something you're blocking that you shouldn't, and it takes you an hour just to find the rule set and then another hour to maybe debug it and put it in. And again, that's going to depend on your network team and their level of skill as well. But even still, it's not the best way. And I'm sure, again, there are tools to help you manage it. I think I like your suggestion. I think where you're going, John, is like basic filtering rules on your network gear. Maybe some more firewalls inside of your network to separate traffic that are more manageable. I think the tools to manage firewalls are better than the tools to manage routers and switches in their access lists. So you can get a FireMon or any one of those companies, right, to help you with your firewall management. And then host-based firewalls, absolutely, completely.
Yeah,
I think it's a much better strategy.
It is, and I was just thinking about like when I first started with Security Weekly. I think it was back in 2005. I think is when we first met. I'm not sure, but we were sitting down and we were talking about implementing private VLANs on client network segments and how effective that was in stopping attacks. And we were like, yeah, this is so awesome. This is so great. It stops all these attacks. And then you said something effective, but it sucked. And I'm like, I know, right? That's really hard to do.
Yes. Well, and that's when I was still at the university and we were experimenting with that type of technology. And it just, then it wasn't there. I don't know, today.
But now you got Cisco. We got, all joking aside, you have Cisco ICE, you have Forescout is a really good product as well, even though they hate to be called network access control products. That's pretty much what they're doing. But doing that segmentation down to the workstation and tying it to the authentication of a user, that's awesome sauce. And we do see that in organizations, and it is effective.
And it's rare because it's hard to manage and configure maintain and implement.
Takes love, care, and feeding.
Yes. So do you still use intrusion prevention? I mean, are people still blocking intrusions on their network firewalls, next generation firewalls? Is that still a valid?
Kelsey, we're still, Kelsey, we are seeing IPS systems periodically block us in like red teams and stuff. Yeah, we see that quite a bit. So yeah, we are seeing it quite often in our assessments, and it's pretty effective against the standard scanning, spray and pray type thing. And that depends on the type of engagement we're doing. If we're dealing with an engagement that's a pure red team, black team, we'll find ways to step around that with something like Proxy Cannon. But with the standard, like let's say we're doing a standard vulnerability assessment or a basic level 1 pen test, they're going to end up whitelisting us. But yeah, that does work to stop the directed kind of script kiddie coming at your organization.
And now the last point I had here was egress filtering. Do most people still get this wrong? I mean, is there still, like, we need to do a public service announcement for egress filtering?
The problem with egress filtering is if you allow one unmonitored protocol out of your network, that's going to be used as a command and control. And DNS is one of the classic ones. You can try to filter absolutely everything down, but if you allow recursive lookups outside of your environment, then we can use that as a command and control channel. So what I'm going to say is people are getting it right. They're getting a lot better at locking down the protocols that are leaving the environment. However, we're not quite 100% there. But this is good because if we're a bad guy and we're trying to get out and we hit like 15 blocked ports and services before we actually get to something like DNS, well, those are like 15 opportunities for you to detect us.
That's a good point.
And that's where we're falling flat on our face in a lot of organizations. They're blocking, they're doing good filtering, but their alerting is really weak. And I can understand why. We talk about SIMs and alerts, and it's overwhelming.
And I remember Pony Express, who's a sponsor, even their earlier products, you could drop one of their devices in the inside of a network, and it would automatically just go through the list of, can I get out this way? 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 Until it found one that actually worked and didn't require a human being in order to do that. So, and then I guess if all else fails, you just have a cellular data connection on whatever device you're dropping in. Of course, but that helps because that means someone's going to have to physically plug something in. And, I like your take on you basically raise a lot of bells and alarms and whistles when you start trying all of those different things that are failing, which is good.
Very cool.
Anything else on network security architecture, John, that you that I didn't have on my list that you wanted to just talk about? Maybe some things you see that either work or don't work on when you do engagements?
I still am a huge fan of user behavioral analytics, and I understand there's been a lot of research over the past year or so about bypassing individual products, and that's great. We need that. We need to break these products, but this is where we need to be, right? Instead of trying to watch for specific event IDs, we need to be looking at the aggregate of how a system is behaving, how a user account is behaving, and then basically baselining that and then reacting to it. And that's something we just don't see enough of. We're starting to see more of it, but we need to see a lot more moving forward.
Awesome. Well, thank you, John, and thank you, everyone, for listening and watching to this edition of Enterprise Security Weekly. See everyone next time.